Hello everyone, I hope that you had a chance to watch those two videos I posted from YouTube. They come from a movie called Dead Poet Society, and that movie stars Robin Williams. It's a great movie. I think it's just a really good introduction and way to inspire before we start this unit about poetry. Now, before we get to reading any poems, we're going to have to spend this week studying and talking about poetic devices. So that's what the purpose of this video is. Now, there are a lot of poetic devices, so you're going to receive several words, several terms, and several definitions, and you need to make sure you're keeping up with all these terms and definitions, either on a piece of paper or some kind of note-taking app, because you will be tested over these terms and definitions at the end of the week. I want you to know them so that when we start talking about poems and reading through them, you'll be able to identify poetic devices, because poetic devices are what an author uses to create their poem, to make it have a certain sound, to make it have a certain feeling, to put emphasis on certain things. So it's very important when studying poetry. And when writing poetry, it's important to know some of the poetic devices that you can use. And the great poets of the past and of today still use these poetic devices. And as we go through this unit over the next couple weeks, or next few weeks, we will be covering different types of poems, all different kinds, new stuff, old stuff, spoken word poetry, all different kinds. And so I hope that you'll really enjoy all of it. So let's go ahead and get started with our first poetic device. The first term I want you to know is just poetry. What is it? And poetry is simply figurative writing made up of lines and stanzas. And we'll talk more about what lines and stanzas are exactly as we go on. The second term is stanza. A stanza is a group of lines making up a division of poetry. So a way to think about a stanza is to think about it like a paragraph. And it's important to know what a stanza is, because as we look at these poems, I'm going to be telling you, okay, look at the third stanza, and I need you to know where to go. I need you to know what that means. So a stanza is like a paragraph of a poem. So it's a group of lines that are set together, making up a division of poetry. So let me show you what an example of that looks like. Here's an example of what a stanza looks like. So that stanza that's in the red arrow, that would be your second stanza. So you can kind of see what I mean by it's like divided, almost like paragraphs are divided. So this would be your first stanza, this would be your second stanza, your third stanza, and your fourth stanza. So if I said, I want you to look at the third stanza, so you'd know to go here. And then if I told you I want you to look at the third line in the third stanza, you would know to count, okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay, that's the third line in the third stanza. So knowing lines and stanzas will help you determine kind of what we're looking at exactly as we talk through some of the poems in the future. Our next term is rhyme scheme. Rhyme scheme is a pattern of rhyme throughout a poem, and we'll look at how to label rhyme scheme in just a little bit. Here's an example. This is an example of a poem that has a rhyme scheme. So you can see like cloud and crowd, they rhyme. Hills and daffodils rhyme. Trees and breeze. So it's kind of created a pattern. So whenever you're looking at rhyme scheme, you're looking at the last word in each stanza to see if it has a rhyme scheme or not. And since some of these words in these last stanzas rhyme and kind of create a pattern like every other line or maybe 2 lines in a row, then we know that it has a rhyme scheme. The next term is free verse, and free verse is when you have an irregular rhyme scheme. So you can't really figure out that there's a pattern of rhyme through the poem, but you can see some words that do rhyme. For example, like dreamer and fingers. So you will notice a little bit of rhyme, but there's really no pattern to it because you notice how many lines are in between these two words that rhyme. So that's irregular rhyme scheme, also known as free verse. The next term, and this also deals with rhyme, is called blank verse. This is when a poem has no rhyme scheme, so nothing rhymes. These poems are a little bit easier to write because we don't have to worry about our words rhyming. So the poet doesn't rhyme intentionally, and that's called blank verse. So make sure you understand and remember the difference between free verse and blank verse. Rhyme. Hello, you've known that probably since kindergarten, but that's definitely a poetic device, and that's just when you have sounds alike at the end of the words. So the whole word doesn't have to rhyme, just the ending sound of the word. So, like my name is Anna, and we know that that rhymes with banana. Now, do these words sound alike at the beginning? No, but do they sound alike at the end? Yes, so they rhyme. Now, we have a lot of poetic devices to get through, but we're not going to cover them all in one sitting. So the last thing we're going to talk about today is labeling rhyme scheme and how to label rhyme scheme, because we've talked a lot today about rhyme and different kinds of rhyme schemes like free verse or blank verse or pattern rhyme scheme, which is what we're about to learn how to label. So when you're labeling rhyme scheme, you use letters of the alphabet to show the arrangement of pattern of rhyme. So let's look at an example together. This is the same poem we were looking at earlier to identify stanzas. This is a very famous poem by Robert Frost, and it's called The Road Not Taken. So the first thing you have to do is be aware that you're only focused on the last word in each line. Okay, that's your only focus. So the first line will always receive the letter A. Always receive the letter A. So we're looking at the word wood. Then you have to go through the poem, and anything in the entire poem, the whole entire poem that rhymes with wood, that's that last word in the line, if it rhymes with wood, it also gets an A. So both know stood. Okay, stood and wood rhyme, so it also gets an A. Could. Okay, could and would rhyme, so it also gets an A. Growth, no. Fair, no. Claim, no. Where, no. There, no. Same, no. Lay, black, day, way, back, sigh, hence, I, by, difference. Nope. None of the other words in the poem rhyme with wood. So we're done with the letter A. So then you jump all the way back up here to the next line that needs a letter, and that is both. And it gets a B, the next letter of the alphabet. And then anything else that rhymes with both gets a B. So growth, so it gets a B. Fair, claim, where, there, same. Nope, there aren't any words in the rest of the poem that rhyme with growth. So we're ready for fair, the next line, and it gets a C. Then where rhymes with fair, so it gets a C. There rhymes with fair, so it gets a C. And then as I look through the poem, there's no other words that rhyme with fair, so we're ready to move on to claim. Claim gets a D. Same rhymes with claim, so it gets a D. And then as I look through the poem, there's nothing else that rhymes with claim. Moving on to lay. Lay will get the next letter of the alphabet, which is E. Day rhymes with lay, so it gets an E. Way rhymes with lay, so it gets an E. And nothing else in the rest of the poem rhymes with lay. Then we go back up here. Black gets an F. Back rhymes with black, so it gets an F. Nothing else in the poem does. So moving on to G, sigh. I rhymes with sigh, so it gets a G. By rhymes with sigh, it gets a G. Hence gets an H. Difference rhymes with hence, same ending, so it gets an H. So as you can see, this poem has a very patterned rhyme scheme. if on a test I were asked you to label the rhyme scheme of a poem, this is how you would label it. So you're focusing on the last words. Any words that have the same rhyme get the same letter, and you just work your way through the alphabet. So most poems don't go too far into the alphabet, but sometimes they can. So the rhyme scheme of this poem would be I'm sorry. It would be A, B, A, B, C, D, C, C, D, E, F, E, E, F, G, H, G, G, H. So you can really tell that there's a pattern here that has formed. So that is all that we're covering for today. There's still more poetic devices left to cover, so be sure to tune in to the next video. Okay, and I will see you next time.